welcome to the program, everyone. And really pleased today to have a special guest all the way in Stockholm in Sweden, Mr. George Bronten. And George is a sales effectiveness pioneer. He's a long-term entrepreneur, and he started his company Membrane back in 2012, which is a sales automation platform, and is maybe the leading sales enablement platform for CRM. So really looking forward to having a discussion with George today. So George, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Okay, so let's get into it, George. And I'm interested to dig into your story a little bit. And I know you're like a long-term entrepreneur, and then you started this sales enablement platform company 7 years ago before everyone was talking about sales enablement. So that makes you the pioneer in this area. So what made you do that? What did you see as an opportunity or a gap here?
Yeah, that's a story. I'll try to keep it short.
Okay.
But basically, it was based on my own experiences and my own mishaps and wrongdoings. In my previous company, before Membrane, we sold IT software products to value-added resellers. So we sold pretty transactional products at first, email server, proxy server, antivirus, and that kind of stuff to these VARs who were our resellers. And then we shifted the model to really focus on them, on their companies, and how to make them more profitable. So we introduced a solution that enabled them to shift their entire business model and go from a really struggling business. Most of them were having trouble being profitable. They were maybe at 3% profits, even though they worked like crazy.
Products and selling boxes.
Yeah. And being very reactive to, break and fix and tough climate, tough competition.
Yeah.
So we started selling this new offering, which at first I did not really realize how different of a sale it was. What I knew was that we wanted to increase the average sales size to grow our own company. And this software that we started selling was about $70,000 average deal value. And previously we were at maybe $150 per order.
Oh, okay. Very
average deal value. So it was a very different type of sale. But it was such an obvious investment from my perspective. So we started selling it, and I started selling it myself. And then I brought in my youngest brother, and he was successful selling it. And then we started to scale the team. So I hired a lot of salespeople, and I hired them and I fired them, and I hired and I fired. And that became a very costly endeavor after a while. So I had to sit down and think, like, okay, what's going on? Why aren't these salespeople who I've hired using professional recruitment companies? They all had great CVs. They had sold. They were perfect salespeople on paper, but they weren't selling this solution for me. And my conclusion was, okay, the problem aren't the salespeople that I hired and fired. The problem, I realized, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, was me. I was the big problem.
Really? Okay.
That's such a surprise, right?
That's great self-awareness to start with. I applaud you for being so humble.
Oh, yeah. That was a tough moment. But yeah, so I started reading
a lot of other people would
selling.
just keep firing salespeople and get another batch and blame them. But that's...
Yeah, that's what I had been doing, but I couldn't afford that any longer.
Yeah, okay.
So I really had to get to that in. Yeah. So I started reading everything I could find on sales methodology, sales process. I went to a lot of courses and networked a lot with other sales directors to figure out what they were doing, what I was doing wrong. And the conclusion out of that I came to was that I hadn't trained them enough. I didn't really understand the complexity of the sale. Because now, previously, we had sold simple products to a low price, which was, it was a no-brainer for the reseller to push them to their customers. Yeah, commodity products, basically, with a twist. And now we were basically changing all processes within their companies. And on top of that, they had to invest $70,000, which for these companies was a lot of money. So there was a high risk involved.
Yes.
From their perspective. So that was another realization that this is a whole other ball game, and all the books, the traditional sales books, solution selling, spin selling, and all these methodologies that I read had pretty good frameworks on how to do these. How to actually question, which questions to ask, all this. So I learned a lot from that. But then I realized that, okay, I for some reason I was successful. My brother was successful. So what were we doing differently? So I started sort of writing down on a paper, like what's my process? What am I actually doing? And then I looked at the salespeople and went to started really analyzing what they were doing and not doing, and I tried to overlay this to find sort of deltas and differences.
Okay.
And that was sort of an aha moment for me, because what I found was a lot of times the deals they lost due to simple mistakes that they made. So a classic one was that they did not talk to the tech people at that company. So they went to the owner and the board and the sales director and the CEO, and they were all fired up about this new concept and this new model of working and going from 3% to 30% profit margins. They were all over it. And then the sales guy took it from there to a proposal, like jumped over a number of steps, including one of the most important steps, which was to really include the technical guys, because they're usually guys, and get them to see the benefits. So they got all afraid. It's like, oh my God, my boss is going to buy an IT automation platform, and we're all going to lose our jobs.
Sure. Or make their life complicated, or some other thing they don't know, right? Just hear this system. I mean, they're going to be negative.
They were very negative, and they really stopped those deals from happening. So, and that was a pretty simple mistake. You would think that a skilled and trained salesperson would not make such a mistake, but they did it all the time. So I sat down with them and asked, why are you doing this? I mean, why are you not talking to the tech people? Like, tech people, very difficult to communicate with tech people. Oh, yeah. They're so strange.
Okay. Yeah.
That was sort of the feedback I got. It's like, yeah, okay, but you know what? They're the heroes in these companies. They're doing the job.
Cool.
So, I mean, you need to learn how to talk to this tech people. Do the pizza on Thursday speech.
Yes.
What are you talking about? What do you mean pizzas? Like, yeah, because every Thursday, this was a way back in time, but every Thursday, once a month, Microsoft released the patches, and these poor tech guys had to work overtime to update all the customer servers. And of course, they didn't really like that. It was boring work. It was overtime. They would rather be at a game or with a family. So when they realized that this new piece of software could automate that, they were like, well, this might be something good after all. So just a simple story like that could really get these tech guys on the right side of the equation.
Yes.
So that was the sort of the two takeaways was, okay, I didn't give them the structure, the process and the methodology and the training. And I was maybe allowing is the wrong word, but I hadn't identified these simple mistakes. So they were made just over and over again. So I needed to find a way to sort of make sure we're always executing our way of selling in a proper way and never do the stupid mistakes. and then we would be in a better place. So that's how Membrane started. Sorry about the long
No, it's good.
background story here, but
yeah. I think it's
so that was the whole thing.
because there's always going to be that gap, right? From even though, let's say, like a Miller-Heiman process or the Sandler process or whatever process you like, you still need to adapt that to your business. You need to take bits from this one, bits from that one, and then fit. And there's still lots of gaps in between, like the gaps you're talking about. You can't just execute those in a vanilla way, right? And every company will have its own methodology.
Exactly, and there's a difference between process and methodology, right? The process is sort of the milestones, the steps we need to take and align with the buyer, and the methodology is how we actually go about asking those questions. What information are we looking for?
Yep.
So
yes,
Membrane is really my response to sort of marrying these two. We have to have both process and methodology. So what should we be doing, and how should we be doing that, and why? And then how do we align that with what the buyer needs to do on their end, so that we don't get out of sync with the buyer, which is very common, another common mistake.
Yes. So what do you see in sales organizations? Like, how well are they managing this issue? Is this as you talk to customers, is this a common experience similar to what you had, where they got some folks who are making it and maybe working it out because, they're just extra bright or they connect the dots better, but most of their team maybe, are struggling?
Yeah, I see it all the time, and it's everywhere, right? So it's in small companies and large enterprises. It's pretty much the same. And I think one of the reasons is that selling hasn't really been seen as a profession, but we've had and still have, to a large extent, assumptions and limiting beliefs on what makes a salesperson. So a salesperson, some think, is born, whereas I definitely don't think that. Of course, you can have traits that will make it easier for you to become a professional salesperson, but it's really a profession, and you need to learn it. You need to train. You need to educate yourself. You need a good coach. You need mentors, etc., etc. So yeah, I see it all the time, and also this confusion about what a sales process is. If you look at a lot of, and this was why I created Membrane, was also because of the CRM systems that I looked at after having this realization of what I needed to do and what I needed to help my salespeople do, was that these CRM systems are sort of developed based on that assumption that salespeople know how to sell and should just log what they've done. And the sales process is usually just like a drop-down list with a few stages, like a first meeting, second meeting, send a proposal, close the deal.
Yeah, demo.
It's so silly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Do a demo, send a proposal. So when I usually compare that to pilots, pilots use checklists, and everybody knows that, and that feels comforting to us, right? That they don't take off with a plane without the plane having fuel in it, for instance. So when I do PowerPoint presentations, I sometimes have this slide where I say, do you think this is how a pilot's checklist looks like? It's like, enter the plane, start the plane, fly the plane, land the plane, exit the plane. And people start laughing. It's like, of course not. That would be silly, right? That would make no sense.
Sure.
But in selling, that's basically what we do. It's like, talk to a client.
Yeah. Call them.
Meet with a client.
Send a quotation.
Do a demo.
Yeah.
Send a quotation. Win it or lose it. It's like, that's not very helpful. Yeah, I see this all the time. And also, there's a resistance from salespeople. That's another issue, actually. Salespeople I think as human beings, we have a strong need for autonomy. Most of us don't want to be told what to do. So as soon as someone hears the word process, they cross their arms and like, oh my God,
Sure.
this is going to be painful.
No, because their experience is top
Uh,
down, and even the negative experience of CRMs, which are really sort of a senior management or CEO tool to sort of get a picture of what's going on and try and forecast their business. It hasn't been designed to help sales sell, really. We try and pitch it to salespeople that it's there to help them, and if they use it, it's going to be valuable. But I don't see many salespeople really buying into that.
No, I agree. And we struggle with that a lot as well, even though we do really our utmost to make this a tool, to make memory a tool for them to be helped by. But I think it's this feeling of, I went into this profession to have a high degree of autonomy, and process seems like something that would restrict that. And I think that's also a limiting belief, because when I go grocery shopping every day, which I don't do every day maybe, but when I do, I certainly bring a checklist,
Right.
because I would forget stuff, or I would buy the wrong brand of milk, so I'll have to go back to the store because my wife kills me.
Yes.
Another bad example, but you get my point.
Yes.
Like it's really hard for human beings to be disciplined and memorize many things and keep many things in our brain at the same time. So we do need that support. So we just have to look at it, I think, in a different way and say, okay, pilots use checklists to prevent lives from being wasted or at risk. We should also have something similar to prevent deals from dying.
What are some of the implications or the cost of not doing something about this?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. If you're in a B2B sales environment, usually every deal is important. So you look at your average deal size and say, okay, like in my case, it was $70,000 per deal. So as soon as a salesperson lost a deal, yeah, that was $70,000 we didn't make.
Yeah.
So if I could, my thesis at the time was, if I could just reduce these simple mistakes, like not talking to the tech people, we would probably not lose
right.
maybe 2-3 deals per salesperson per year. So that would be
pretty big numbers pretty quickly.
200K. Yeah, you can. I mean, then if you have a team of 50 salespeople, that adds up pretty quickly. So it's big bucks, and
yes,
it's something. And this is something that still surprises me, that a lot of sales leaders and maybe even higher ups, like company leaders, shrug their shoulders a bit when I talk about this. Like, nah, that's just the way it is, and nobody's perfect. It's like, no, that's definitely not the way it is, right, or should be.
Yes.
Because making these stupid mistakes is just unnecessary.
Sure.
So yeah, I get really fired up, and I think the ROI is so good on, and you don't have to be. I mean, you know how many tech solutions come out every day from Silicon Valley and other hubs in the world. We see tools solving one specific problem and another problem, and email faster, call faster. There's a lot of technology being put out on the market right now for salespeople. But I think the main sort of fulcrum in all this is the sales manager. The sales managers really need to get their act together and figure out how they should be selling, what mistakes are being made, and what good looks like. And they're so behind when it comes to these things.
Yeah. So George, what does good look like, do you think? What are some of the key factors? Or could you give me an example of a company that's getting this right? Even if you don't say the name, but what are some of the components that they're doing? and what sort of results are they getting with it?
Yeah, I think it starts with deciding that you believe that how you sell is really a key, or maybe the last differentiator that you have in a market like this now, where all products, all services look the same to buyers online. So how you go to market and how you sell is super important, and that needs to be a realization from the top. So leadership, owners need to get that, and then they go out on a journey to sort of define their way of selling. So how should we be selling? What do our customers want? What's important to our clients? And then they build a strategy centered around that buyer or client. And then they sort of transform or translate that strategy into an executionable or executable process / methodology, and follow up. Did I say follow up? All the time.
Sure.
And that's again, sales managers, that comes down to them. So we underinvest in sales managers. So those who do it right, they invest a lot, not just in the strategy and that stuff, but they really focus on getting their sales managers.
That's a good point. There's a lot of leverage investing in sales managers. I agree. Yeah.
Huge leverage that is undervalued today.
Yes.
And when I say follow up, I also
thing, right? You're going to be refining. You're going to be refining this stuff all the time, right? So when you say follow up, test, get feedback, what's working, what's not working, build that in. If something's working, spread it across the team quite quickly, and get everyone working to that efficiency.
Which is really hard.
Yeah, I've seen it work very well.
That's really hard to do.
Yeah, I worked in Dell for a long time back in the day, and we just run the same sales process globally, pretty much. And then if one country or one region started performing very well on a certain metric in a certain segment, that metric became the benchmark for you to achieve in your country the next quarter, right? So you better find out what they were doing, like with their ads, or what they were doing on the queue, or what they were doing with their quotes, or what they were attaching to the quote, to get that better result. So you really had to dig into the sort of stuff you're talking about, beyond the metric, but what were they doing? And everyone had to step up to that level. That became the benchmark.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good example. And also be agile on the details, because it could be that you can find out when you analyze the results of your pipelines that you are very weak against a specific competitor. So you need a plan to combat that. Or you're very strong in a specific industry. So maybe you should go segment that out and go after that segment first.
Yes.
Instead of just spray and pray. So yeah, there's a lot of insights that can be had from just analyzing the sales results and then changing the tactics thereafter. So yeah, that's a very good point. Continuous improvements, and that goes to learning as well, right? How do we make sure that our salespeople continuously educate themselves to become better? Because sometimes I hear people say in interviews like, oh yeah, I have 18 years of sales experience. And you start digging into it and you realize that, well, really you have 1 year experience multiplied by 18.
Right.
You're doing the same things today that you did 18 years ago. It's not good enough.
No, exactly. So you don't want to hear that. You want to hear what they've done lately, what they've learned lately, what's their development. Are they investing in their own? Like, there's so much to learn about sales. Like, I've been in sales 30 years. Every week I'm learning something new, and my mind's getting opened up. And whether it's about social, whether it's about branding, whether it's about some email technique, sales, the sort of stuff you're talking about, sales methodology, like it's such a huge field, and it's, there's a lot of best practices to catch up with. I don't want to say everything's changed.
Yeah, and
Not
that's a
everything's
mindset,
changed.
right?
Not everything's changed. There's a lot of good fundamentals still, but there's a lot of things we need to cover. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And the fundamentals is something I nag about a lot. We have to know how to have a conversation with another human being. We can't be hiding behind automation. I see a lot of automation tools for salespeople. I hate that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that you can automate sales in a complex B2B sales environment. Of course, you can automate transactional sales, but
Yeah.
then you don't need salespeople.
Sure.
So I think the whole automation thing is killing the profession. We have to realize that professional selling is about a human to human interaction. It's about trust. It's about understanding and empathy and business acumen. It's all these things that are in fact pretty fundamental to sales, to professional sales. And that's always been hard. It's nothing new with that.
No, it is hard. It is hard. And I think you make a really good point, and it's something I talk about a bit, about sales being the last differentiation. And I definitely see so many industries, globalization, commoditization, customers finding it very hard to differentiate between solutions. If I've got a problem, I can solve it 50 different ways from lots of different suppliers and companies. So who's going to help me sort through that? Who's going to help me, build the business case? Who's going to help me buy? Who's going to, help me get it through my own organization? That the sales interface and the sales skills, are so critical to organize. To count on having a competitive advantage with your product is folly today, I think.
Agreed. Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And I think also the what you said there about helping the buyer internally is key. I mean, getting that consensus internally, I think is probably the number one problem people are doing. It goes back to the pizza and Thursdays example that I had in my previous company.
Right.
You didn't get those tech people on board. The
can
deal
be
was
the
dead
key.
in the water.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been working on a deal with one of my clients over the last month or so, and they've got the tech people on board with their solution, right? And there's other people trying to derail the deal. But the tech guys are giving us really good feedback. No, you guys are fine. Don't change anything. We've said we're not going to accept any other solution, even though procurement's getting involved and all. So I can definitely relate to that. And it's critical to cover your bases, and because we know customers are not very experienced at buying our complex solutions, right? They maybe if you're selling a CRM, say, maybe they're buying their CRM every 5 years, every 10 years, or they're buying a solution like that once a year. Whereas hopefully if we're good salespeople, we're dealing with tens of deals a year or hundreds of deals in our career. And within our company, there's a lot of experience in managing these deals and getting them approved. So we can definitely help the buyer, get through that. And that's the sort of stuff we capture in our methodology, right? And exactly like with your Pizza Thursday example.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And effective story.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, George, I think.
And I think.
Go on.
I don't know if we have time, but just a reflection based on some of that you said is that I see a lot of in sales management or from companies that they want a quick fix, right? They want to, okay, we're not selling as much as we should, so let's send the salespeople to a 2-day training. Let's bring in this latest book that's hyped, that's a new methodology, and train them on that, and then everything's going to change. And that's why I think sales enablement as sort of a department or a role in a company is important, because this all needs to be orchestrated, right? It's not just about a training, 2-day training. That's going to be forgotten quickly. It's not about the latest and most shiny tool that you can go find to fix your prospecting or whatever point solution you might be looking at. So it's about having a more holistic approach to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So George, definitely want to talk to you about sales enablement in another discussion for sure. Let's dig into that topic. But really want to thank you for your time today. I got a lot out of that, and I think the listeners will as well. So anything you want to finish up with, any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, thanks for having me. It was fun to chat with you today. And if someone wants to chat with me, they can find me on LinkedIn. That's the place I'm at most of the time. So
we'll post all your links in the show notes. Thanks. And people can definitely find you on LinkedIn and at Membrane as well. So, all right, George, thanks very much, and thanks everyone for listening and watching. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks.